Today I wanted to talk about socialism and corruption in Portugal. Portugal has been a socialist country for 44 years, which is basically when we started being a so-called democracy. And I'm doing air quotes as I say democracy, because Portugal isn't really a democracy. Portugal is completely captured by interests. We have levels of corruption that you can't even believe. It's, as far as I'm concerned, it goes beyond what you'll find in Italy, for example, with the mafias and all that. I think Portugal has gone beyond that because the politicians basically control everything. Justice, all sorts of media. They control everything, and the biggest party of them all, the one that has had more time in power, is the Socialist Party. The Socialist Party is responsible for the majority of corruption in Portugal. And when I say majority, I mean an absolute majority, almost 90 to 100%, because they tend to control all sorts of regions in Portugal. I don't know the exact wording in English for it, but we have what people would call city halls, and we have, in such a small country, we have about 300 or more than 300 of those. But then we have the smaller, places that aren't big enough to have a city hall. They have what we call a junta de freguesia, which is, let's say, a smaller city hall. And the amount of and we have about 4,000, more than 4,000 of those. And the amount of corruption that goes on in these city halls and in these smaller city halls is beyond belief. I mean, we are talking about people hiring all sorts of family members, their children, their uncles, their grandparents. It's not about competency for the job. It's about gaining power and then abusing that power. And of course, this also involves friends from certain companies, friends from places of some importance that require, or they do some sort of lobbying, and then they require a special position that will allow them to make sure that what they intend by that lobbying is accomplished. And in Portugal, this is the mentality, this is the culture, and most of the city halls, for example, are controlled by socialists. I think I need to point out the fact as well that all the parties in Portugal are left-leaning, or I should say all the parties in the parliament are left-leaning except one. And that one is center-leaning, although they are also very much pro-socialist policies. But they are the only party that is not left-leaning in terms of their ideology, at least. Every other party is either left or far left. We also have one center-left, but in actual fact, this party, which is similar to what you have in America, for example, the Democratic Party. The Democrats. This is our center-left party here, which we call Social Democrats, and they are pretty much socialists. They are the same as the Socialist Party. Essentially, the difference is that they apply socialism slower than the Socialist Party. They have basically no other policies other than increasing the state, more taxes, more bureaucracy, making sure that they keep their clienteles, like the public servants and the pensioners, happy so that they can vote for them. And this is the strategy of the Socialist Party. This is the strategy of the far left parties, such as the Communists. And we also have another party, far left party, which is basically the feminists party and the one responsible for pushing those idiotic identity politics into law. Gender and identity politics into law. Recently, they pushed, and because they are part of the government since 2015, after a coup that the Socialist Party performed, in 2015, basically we had elections, and the center-left coalition with the center party won the elections. They were government during the financial adjustment period between 2011 and 2015, because the socialists in 2011 brought our country to bankruptcy, and so we had to request financial aid to the IMF. And along with the IMF, of course, the European Commission was involved, and the Central European Bank was also involved. So, and we called those three the Troika. And between 2011 and 2015, the center-left and center coalition governed the country, but basically they didn't, they didn't use their own program, their government program. They used the program that Troika built. They wrote the government program for that period because we were under financial assistance from them, and basically we had to correct all the problems that we had caused by the socialists. We had to correct all the problems that we had in order to keep receiving money that essentially didn't let us go into bankruptcy, strictly speaking. So in 2015, this government obviously was able to reduce our deficit. The socialists left us a deficit of 11%, and this government was able to do in about 4 years, although Troika, the program, the financial aid program, ended in 2014, and this center-left and center coalition had another year as government in 2015, but the deficit was reduced to 4.4%. So it was, I wouldn't say a success, but it was good enough to let off some steam, quite a bit of steam actually, because lots of things had to be done that no one wanted to do. As I said, the socialists, the left-leaning parties, they always want to do the same. They always want to increase the state. They always want to increase the spending. They always want to keep their clienteles, the ones that vote for them, happy, so that in the end, they, get power again. Because in power, in Portugal at least, the justice system is so corrupt, and it simply doesn't work. It's a complete joke, the justice system in Portugal. It simply does not work. And when they are in power, they are untouchable. You cannot do anything against these people. And in fact, the prime minister that was governing our country between 2005 and 2011, the one that brought us to our most recent bankruptcy, which, by the way, is our third bankruptcy. In 44 years of socialism, Portugal has been through 3 bankruptcies. 2 in the 1980s and 1 in 2011. All of them had, in some way, the hands of the socialists. The 1980s, the first one wasn't directly caused by the socialists, but the second one did. And in 2011, it was absolutely done by the socialists. And this prime minister, which is called José Sócrates, I'm not sure if you If you heard about him, probably you heard about him because he's being accused of corruption, precisely, lots of crimes of corruption. And it's still, he is not being tried yet because, again, the justice system in Portugal is a joke. And actually we had a, what's it called? Yeah, basically it's a way to choose the judge that will proceed with the possible trial, or at least what we call instruction. I'm not sure if that's the right word in English for that, but basically it's a process before a trial, and the instruction procedure will decide if all the crimes that these people are being accused of, and it's not just Socrates, of course, because he involved lots of people, lots of corrupt people to do his schemes, obviously to make lots of money, and all of it usually at the expense of the Portuguese people and their tax money. And so the instruction procedure basically will decide, or the judge that oversees this procedure will decide which crimes, if any, will indeed go to trial. And there was a process of choosing the judge for this instruction procedure. And what happened was that only two judges were available for this, and yet this application that made the selection of the judge had three or four errors before deciding the name of the judge. You know, the application supposedly does the choosing based on the number of things that particular judge has in hands, and the choice was made towards a judge that is known in Portugal for essentially releasing criminals. Everything that the prosecution puts forward against someone, this judge has always refused. He has never allowed any sort of scrutiny done, to investigate supposed criminals. And I'm not just talking about, white-collar crimes. I'm talking about, these Islamic radicals coming to Portugal to try and recruit people for ISIS, for example. And this judge, basically set the guy free. He also set some gang members that were, destroying ATMs and stealing the money. They were called the Multibanco gang. Multibanco is ATM for us in Portugal. And he set them free. He set them free. This guy is a judge. And this is why I say the justice system in Portugal is an absolute nonsense. It's non-existent, completely corrupt, completely controlled by the politicians. And you just investigate or try to investigate any sort of politician that goes to jail in Portugal, and you're going to find that it's very, very rare. It's almost non-existent, and they never get any sort of high penalty. They never spend more than perhaps a year, and even then, as I said, it's rare that they go to prison. Very, very rare. And so this guy was chosen to, handle the instruction procedure.